Ford versus Lexus, a comparison that perhaps some of you never thought could happen, but with the used market, it's possible, all right? You can spec out a Mustang GT Premium with the performance package for around $54,000, maybe a little bit less if you stick with the manual transmission. But I decided to add the 10-speed to the Mustang since we're comparing it to the RCF here. But which RCF are we comparing the Mustang GT to? Well, it's obviously not a brand new RCF because brand new, the RCF is like 75 grand. The way I would spec it out, even starting price, it's around $67,000. So it's not quite in the same price category as the regular Mustang GTs. Maybe the Mach 1, but the Mach 1 is a different story. But what I found and what we're going to be discussing is a 2017 RCF, a used model. And I've found one here in Georgia. It's a 2017 RCF at a used car dealer's lot, and it's around $49,939 with 37,000 miles on it. So used RCF or a brand new Mustang? That's kind of the question that we're gonna try and answer here. And which one is going to be a better daily, a fun car, whatever, right? That's gonna be the question that we're gonna be answering here. Okay, horsepower wise, a 2017 RCF produces 467 horsepower and 389 pounds-feet of torque versus a 2022 Mustang. It now produces like 10 horsepower less. So it's now at 450 horsepower and 420 pounds-feet of torque. The RCF produces more horsepower, but far less torques than the Mustang. 0 to 60, the manufacturers, they typically rate the Mustang to be around 3.9 seconds, 4 seconds, something like that, with the 10-speed automatic. And for 2022, Lexus is quoting a 0 to 60 time of about 4 seconds. But let's be honest, it's probably closer to about 4.5 seconds, and that's fine. I do not care about the 0 to 60 numbers. That's really irrelevant when determining which car is better as a street car. And that's my primary objective here, not only with this video, but with this entire channel, is finding a proper street car that excites and satisfies. Both of these cars are proper V8 models that I'm checking out here. This is going to be very desirable moving forward when the world just becomes all EVs and everybody's eating like veggie burgers, right? The numbers isn't what matters here. It's how it makes you, the driver, feel, the soul, the character. And I'm not gonna lie, out of the box, if you get a Mustang GT with the dual mode exhaust, that is quite a sonorous experience. That thing sounds so epic. It's one of the most glorious engines that you can get for around $50,000 in a brand new car. I prefer this engine far more to the 6.4 liter Hemi and the 6.2 liter found in the Camaro. This is a far more soulful experience. It really sings, this engine. It's really fascinating. Whereas the RCF out of the box, far more of a subdued engine. You get some induction noise and it's cool. It's a smooth, silky tone, but if you really want to wake it up, like this car sounds nothing like the LC500. When you compare an RCF to an LC500, the LC has a far more louder, better tuned exhaust system put on there, but that's where the aftermarket comes in. If you buy an RCF, you have to put an NVIDIA full exhaust on there. When you do that, it sounds similar to the LC500 and it becomes a much better comparison to the Mustang GT exhaust sound that it produces. So you have to put an exhaust if you want to make your RCF sound great, but if you want a quiet experience, well, there you go. The RCF is a very quiet car out of the box. So that could be good for some, like if you're a little bit older or something and you don't want to make a racket all the time, then the RCF might be the way to go. I'm going to give the points to the Mustang here, but both of them pull really hard out on the highway. It's pretty glorious. I think the RCF max redline is around 7,300 RPM versus the Mustang, which is around 7,500 RPMs. Transmission wise, you can actually get a manual transmission with the Mustang, but I'll be honest, I don't really like the 6-speed get rag transmission. I don't really think it feels that great. The clutch uptake is pretty ambiguous. So, it might be blasphemous to some, but I kind of prefer the 10-speed automatic with the Mustang GT. And that's a better comparison to the RCF because the RCF comes with a 8-speed automatic. Which one's better? Honestly, the 8-speed is far smoother. It's a far better daily driving type of a transmission versus the 10-speed automatic in the Mustang. It can be kind of lurchy around town, not that smooth, but it's an amazing performance transmission. The 10-speed really does shift really quick. Even in just pure automatic mode, when you just put in Sport Plus, it rev match downshifts so well. But that being said, the 8-speed can also do that. When you put the transmission into its Sport Plus mode in the RCF, it really does shift quickly and effortlessly. But you put it in the comfort mode, it's kind of lethargic and it's kind of slow to react, and it's perfect for daily driving, very smooth. So, you know, I feel like the RCF pulls that dual personality a little bit better with that 8-speed transmission, but both of them are pretty great. I don't mind either. So let's get into driving. That's the next thing, because both of these are genuinely performance cars. The Mustang utilizes a McPherson strut front suspension, and it's got the coil suspension in the rear. It no longer uses that live rear axle. So that's the biggest change for the S550 models, like the 2015s and up. It's got an electric steering rack, so does the Lexus, and it changes when you put it into the little sport mode. These are one of the few cars where the sport modes actually do make a difference, and you do feel it. Not particularly with the suspension. For the Lexus at least, there's no real difference when you put it into the Sport Plus or the Comfort. It rides about the same. It's a very marginal difference at best. But the other thing with the Mustang, you can get it with the MagneRide suspension, which is definitely recommended. But how does it feel? The Mustang is completely void of any communication. You have no idea what's going on with the Mustang. Out of the box, there's zero communication with that car. You don't know what the front end is doing. You have no idea what the rear end is doing. That's why so many people just put that thing into a ditch or they spin out in it. You just don't know what's going on as the driver. Whereas the RCF, you know exactly what's going on, because Lexus does a great job making a car that communicates with the driver. Most Japanese cars are really good at that. You know exactly what the car is doing at all times. It can be twitchy. You can definitely provoke it into a drift because it obviously makes a lot of horsepower, right? And it still has very decent torques. And it's a little bit twitchier still than the LC500 because the weight distribution on the RCF is a 55 in the front and 45 in the back, whereas with the LC500, a little bit more stable when cornering in it because it's like 54 weight distribution in the front and 46 in the rear, so you know, a little bit more weight in the rear to balance things out, right? But that being said, the RCF is still a blast. You can kick the rear end out. You can be a total amateur like me, but you can still bring it back every single time. That's what makes the RCF special. Comfort-wise, though, both cars are really comfortable. That's the great thing about both of these cars, the Mustang and the RCF. Really comfortable. Obviously, the RCF edges it out a little bit further in terms of comfort because the RCF, the chassis and everything is set up to be a little bit on the softer side, whereas the Mustang has a little bit more of a sharper, edgier chassis, especially when you get the performance package Mustang, because the chassis tuning actually does change when you go for the performance model, and that's exactly what I recommend you doing if you are going to buy the Mustang. Now, when you daily drive it, obviously the MPGs do matter, and the Mustang is rated to get 15 in the city and 24 in the highway, whether you get the manual or the 10-speed auto. The combined MPG does improve by 1 when you go with the 10-speed automatic, and I'm talking about the fastback, the coupe here, right, not the convertible. So when you compare that with the RCF, which only comes with the 8-speed automatic, obviously, the RCF is rated to do 16 in the city and 25 on the highway. It does 1 MPG better both in the city and the highway, but in the real world, both of them will get about 15 in the city and about 25 in the highway, or maybe around 16 in the city, 25 in the highway. It's pretty much identical, but the main difference is the Mustang comes with a 16-gallon fuel tank versus the RCF that comes with a 17.4-gallon fuel tank. RCF weighs 3,958 pounds, and the Mustang is a little bit lighter than that. The Mustang weighs about 3,730 pounds if you go with the manual, and it goes up to around 3,752 pounds when you get the automatic. So about a 200-pound difference, which is not a lot. Weight isn't a crazy determining factor here. It's really the way the chassis is set up. The RCF is a little bit softer tuned than the Mustang's chassis, especially when it comes with the performance package. The RCF utilizes a far more sophisticated suspension setup, especially in the front. It utilizes a double wishbone setup in the front and a multi-link in the rear. That double wishbone front suspension is going to help it ride a little bit smoother, gives you that more luxurious feel. And obviously a lot of these things, that's what makes the RCF costs more brand new than a Mustang. Steering wise, you know, it goes back to the Mustang having absolutely no feeling and no communication. That's exactly what it is with the steering as well. You just have no idea what's going on. Whereas the steering in the RCF, very direct, you know what's going on with the car. It can be a little bit numb, but at least you know what's going on. The brakes in the Mustang is far superior. Not only does it stop better, but it also is very consistent with the stopping power as well. So it's great for track use. Again, doesn't mean much out in the real world when you're driving on the street. The RCF 6-piston Brembo brakes do a great job bringing that to a halt. No worries there, but I'm just saying the brakes on the Mustang, it's phenomenal. It's one of the best brakes you can get from the factory, and you can obviously use it for track use as well. But one of the main reasons why the RCF is significantly more expensive than the Mustang is because it utilizes a proper interior space. Interior in the Mustang is literally a Motel 6 bathroom when compared to the RCF. It's a joke. It's like the clearance rack. When you're sitting inside of the Mustang, sure, it has some cool things like the leather steering wheel and some metal toggle switches, but that does not make up for that complete kind of plastic brick of an interior that it just utilizes. It creaks, it rattles, it's not put together the best. Whereas the RCF, it's cladded in leather. The seats are super comfortable. That being said, the performance seats in the Mustang, that's not bad either, but the Lexus seats is still superior. Again, it's a far better daily driver, the RCF, because of those seats. But we are talking about a used RCF here, so one of the main benefits of getting a brand new Mustang is you get a lot more of the safety features as standard. So if you suck at driving, well, Ford has you covered here with the standard Ford co-pilot assistance like the automatic high beams. You get blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, that's all standard. With the RCF back in 2017, you had to get a certain like premium package or like a performance package to get the blind spot monitoring and the rear cross traffic alert. Most RCFs probably came with that package used, but just want to let you know that was not standard with the RCF. But I don't really care about that. The RCF is a very easy car to drive. It's easy to place on the road. That's not a problem. The interior, all the points go to the RCF easily. Many people like to complain about the infotainment screen. Honestly, I love using the Lexus infotainment. It's so easy. It comes to me as second nature. However, most people hate it. So the Mustang infotainment, even though it's nothing special to look at, it is very easy to use. So I guess infotainment wise, I'll give the points to the Mustang, but me personally, I like the Lexus infotainment very much, and it looks clean, it looks classy. The gauge cluster looks way cooler in the RCF as well. Although you can get the full digital display in the Mustang if you want, but it's still not as cool to me as the RCF gauges. I feel like the rear seats have a little bit more room in the RCF. The trunk space in both of these cars, the Mustang and the RCF, very large, very usable. The Mustang technically has a slightly larger trunk at 13.5 cubic feet versus the 2017 RCF, which has a 10.1 cubic feet trunk. But you know what? They're both very usable, and you can fold down the seats in both cars, which is a blessing right there. But I think you can probably fit some people in the back of the RCF. They're under 5'8" or something. I think they can get in the back of the RCF a little bit more comfortably. So yeah, interior wise, for the most part, I'm giving all the points to the RCF. It's far superior in that regard, and that's why it costs so much more money. So let's kind of sum everything up here. I mentioned that the Mustang, there's zero communication with the car, and that's true, and that's kind of why so many people crash the thing. However, you cannot deny how capable it is. I'm going to mention Motor Trend here because Randy Post, he did the Laguna Seca laps in both of the cars, the RCF and the S550 Mustang. He took out the 2018 Mustang GT with the PP1 performance package, and he also tested the 2015 RCF. I think the RCF did it in like 1 minute 43 seconds versus the Mustang, which did it in like 20 seconds faster at like 1 minute 23. Get a track car if you're worried about tracking, or just get a motorcycle. Actually, if you're so worried about specs and everything, you don't buy an RCF or any of these naturally aspirated V8 cars for the specs. You buy it for the glorious sonorous V8 engine, okay? But what that time tells me between the Mustang and the RCF, the Mustang is really built far more for track use. It's a tin can of a car. It's nowhere near as refined or quiet or as luxurious as the RCF, and it shows in the lap times. But he's a pro driver. If you want the car to communicate with you, you have to do bushings, suspension tweaks, sway bars, all those types of things, maybe even a tire and wheel upgrade as well. So you're probably into the Mustang for an extra 5 to 10 grand, depending on if you want to do the wheel and tire upgrades as well. And that's extra money that you have to spend. And now you pretty much brought the price up to a brand new RCF. If it were my money, what would I do? Which car would I choose? Between the Mustang and the RCF, I would personally pick the 2022 Chevrolet Camaro. It's true. I mean, an SS Camaro, manual transmission, NPP exhaust, 40 grand. That's it. That's my choice. That's what I'm getting. Cheaper significantly than both of these cars. That's what I'm doing. Or an LT1. I think an LT1 is going to be around 40 grand with the automatic transmission and the NPP exhaust. But the thing with the Camaro is it comes with a 6-speed Tremec manual transmission. So I love that. That's a great manual transmission. But the 10-speed that they co-designed with Ford, it's actually smoother and reacts better in the Camaro. So there's that. And also the Camaro is a very safe car. It actually does pretty well in the crash test safety, whereas the Mustang lags behind the Camaro in terms of crash test safety. And the RCF is a very safe car. I haven't seen the crash test safety, but Lexus typically is. The modern ones anyway, it's very safe. It's not really an issue. But yeah, I'm dead serious. I would rather have a 6.2 liter Camaro with the NPP exhaust. Yes, I prefer the engine of the Mustang to the Camaro, but the NPP exhaust, because it crackles and farts and pops like an F-type Jag, kind of makes up for it. So I'm fine with that. It handles so well. You do not have to touch the Camaro out of the box. It is so perfect. No complaints. The biggest cons with the Camaro is the fact that nobody can fit in it. You have to be like 6 foot and under to be able to fit comfortably inside of the Camaro. It's very low slung. It's more difficult to get in and out of that car than the Mustang and the RCF. RCF is very easy to get in and out of. And also the trunk space is garbage in the Camaro compared to both of these cars, the RCF and the Mustang. But from a driving standpoint, from a price standpoint, and the interior is also far superior in the Camaro to the Mustang. Infotainment is great. So for those three reasons, the Camaro is one of the greatest new car bargains you can get. But of course, because of that, they're going to stop making it. Because despite being the greatest bargain of all time, nobody bought it. But seriously, between the two, would I get a used RCF? You have to keep in mind, this is a 5-year-old car now with almost 40,000 miles on it. Would I have that versus a brand new Mustang? Honestly, yes, because it's a superior car in many ways. You don't have to touch it. It's like 50 grand now as a used car. Get it with the warranty and you're pretty much good to go. And that's the other thing, it's a 5-year-old car with 40,000 miles, but Lexus ages so well. That 5-year-old Lexus is going to feel like a brand new car when you drive it. So just maintain it, just get it with the warranty. Avoid the 2015 model year RCFs because I think it had like a diff issue. I mean, I'm pretty sure Lexus will fix it for you if you have a warranty, but that's besides the point. Just get the 2016s and up. 2017 is ideal, a little bit newer. It's just a quality product, the RCF. The interior is just, cherry on top, right? So it's just, you don't have to do anything to the RCF. It's just perfect from the factory, except for the NVIDIA exhaust. I forgot to mention that. If it were me, I would put the exhaust on there. It's a must. You really have to wake it up. But anything more, once you start talking $75,000, $80,000, I'm getting a certified pre-owned LC500. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. LC500 is far superior to the RCF. I don't care what anybody says. Most of these mainstream journalists, I do not agree with them. Anybody who says the RCF and the LC is the same car is an idiot. I'm sorry. It's just the truth. I don't care who that offends. It doesn't matter to me. But for right now, between the RCF and the Mustang, I would choose the RCF. Because otherwise, you know, I'm 5'11". I can fit comfortably in a Camaro. I would just choose that over the Mustang anyway. So, you know, Camaro, RCF, these are kind of my top picks. So leave your thoughts below. Thanks for watching. I'll leave the next video up here on the end screen. Click it and I will see you there.